Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art Array, where we celebrate all forms of art books, movies, paintings, music. If it's art, I love it. Today, I have a very special guest, James Breakwell. He's the author of Dead on the Inside and Bare Minimum Parenting, and he is the funniest man on Twitter. At least I think so. James, how you doing today?
I am intrigued to be on an art podcast. What I do is about as far from art as what you can get, but I'm honored to be here nonetheless.
Awesome. So basically, the purpose of the show is to, one, hopefully be entertaining, but also to help aspiring artists. Like, there's so many options out there with different things you could do, whether you want to be an artist, a book publisher, a comedian, movie star. There's a lot of different options, which I think on one hand kind of makes it a little bit easier, but it also makes it a little bit harder because now that anyone can do it, pretty much everybody does. So I want to give aspiring artists a chance to kind of choose what's going to be the best option for them, what's going to play to their strengths. So you and I have both tried a very similar route, trying to become famous on Twitter. You have been successful. At this point, I have not. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started on Twitter and then how it eventually rolled into your book deal. And then I believe this is actually your career now, right? You don't have a side job, or do you?
Oh, I have many jobs. It takes a lot to support
like
four kids
regular,
and two pigs. Yeah, I still have a day job. I don't talk about it a whole lot on the internet because it's not funny. But yeah, it's really interesting. I asked my agent the other day. I was like, how many people write just books full time that he works with? And he said none of them. They're all professors or teachers, or they have some complete start. So I've been on Twitter since 2008. I got in the game on there kind of late, and it wasn't like I jumped on Twitter. It was this meteoric rise to success. I tried a lot of different things before I went on there. I tried blogging at first. I started really pushing comedy writing back in the heyday of blogging, but I guess it wasn't quite the heyday. It was when all the revenues were kind of starting to go down. I never made any money at it, but I wrote like 300,000 words on my blog for free and never made any money off of it. And I at the price point of $0, I couldn't get anybody to read it. Then I moved to Twitter and I started sending out tweets to drive traffic to the blog, and gradually Twitter kind of took over my life. And I figured out I could resonate with people a lot more effectively in that shorter format. And I kind of built a following up there and eventually went viral, and that's what led to the book deal. And when you look back and trace it like that, it looks like a very straight line. But at the time, as I was doing it, it was kind of a winding trail through a dark forest. So luckily, it ended up where I wanted to be, but it wasn't necessarily the route I at first thought I would get there by.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying as far as like the shorter medium, because I know one of the things that I've been sort of struggling with is I've been doing most of my promotion on Twitter and everything,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the time people are just scrolling really quick. No one wants to stop while they're on Twitter, and so like it was kind of like I'm starting to realize that. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm not going to do any promotion on Twitter, but I mean that's not really the way to do the main source. Like I need to try and get in front of people who are actually looking for books, such as like bookstores or book festivals or things like that.
Well,
so that's actually what I'm really.
Yeah, it's kind of the whole concept of the funnel. That's kind of what I've stumbled. I didn't invent that concept, obviously, but if you can get somebody to read you for 280 characters, maybe you can get them to read you for 1,000 words. And if you get them to read you for 1,000 words, maybe you can get them to read for 3,000. Then maybe you can get them to read for 50,000. And that's kind of what I do now. People start reading my tweets, and I try to move them to my email list, and that's 3,000 or 4,000 words. And from there, I try to move them towards the books. And sometimes they go all the way through, and something that starts with a tweet ends with a book sale. And sometimes somebody starts with a tweet and ends with a tweet because that's all they want from me, and that's fine too. You get all sorts. So, and that's one of the important things with authors today. You kind of need to diversify your income sources. So I have books, but then the social media on itself, it's not just a sales mechanism. It's an end in and of itself. I mean, you can get a lot of ad revenue there. It is its kind of own pillar. It's kind of like people who take off on YouTube. YouTube's the biggest platform in terms of money, but there are ad dollars elsewhere too. And originally, I kind of thought someday I would just be writing books and be off of social media altogether. But I don't think it's going to be like that. I think that if you're a modern writer trying to make it, you kind of have to have multiple income streams. You've got your social media, and you've got your podcast, and you've got your books, and just kind of all these things remain in place, and they all kind of strengthen each other. And that way, if you fail at one, you don't fail at all of them at once. You always have something to fall back on, and that's always good. Leave yourself a life raft. Drowning is bad.
Yeah. So yeah.
So,
about like the book festivals and everything. Have you ever done anything like that? Like, what's that like? Is
you know,
that like a good experience?
I have. I've done. I went to the American Librarian Conference. I forget the ALA. I guess I don't remember what ALA stands for. It was librarians in Chicago, and I gave a speech up there. It was my first like kind of public speech as an author, and it was a good experience to get it out there. And they gave free drinks, which was nice. I don't know that I really sold a lot of books. It's the same thing with in-person signings. I think the traditional wisdom is you go on a book tour. But in my experience, I have to send out a lot of tweets to get like the people in the same room, and sometimes I sell more books just staying on the internet than trying to. It's kind of like when you try to get 5 friends together in the same place at the same time, how much coordination that takes. I'm not convinced it's super viable unless you have like a huge fan base in a given city. Like it's cool to say you went on book tour or you went here and there, but I'm not confident that that's necessarily the big driver of sales. I think it's one of those things where once you already have the sales, then you can kind of go around and do those things. So actually with my next book, I'm going to try not to do any in-person appearances. I'm going to try to do it all on the internet and see if that doesn't work out better. Because the in-person, well, it is cool to meet people in person. It just seems like the amount of time it takes to get just one person to commit to going there, it's kind of a losing investment.
Okay. So now one of the things I've noticed, and in a minute I'll ask you if you ever encountered like any type of the same problems, is I know with my story, I don't know if you know anything about my story, but it's entitled My Soul Burned, and it's basically the devil's interpretation of how she was cursed out of heaven, and the transformation doesn't happen like right away. Like when she's first cursed down, she's still an angel.
Yeah.
But she feels this terrible pain of being separated from God, and she finds out that consuming the souls of evil kind of like eases that pain. But the more evil she's consuming, the more evil she's becoming, and she kind of becomes more and more desperate to get souls, and that's when she starts bargaining with people, and it's kind of like a slow progression. However, with the subject matter of being the devil, and it is a very dark story, so there are, obviously those people who kind of are a little skeptical. I know when I tried to do the traditional publishing route, none of the agents really wanted to touch it, which was frustrating because I had a few people tell me that it was actually like a really unique and fascinating idea, but they just didn't want to do it. So that was kind of frustrating. Have you ever encountered anything sort of similar to that?
Well, I guess it's one of those things. Everybody thinks that they're going to have the next bestseller and their book's going to appeal to everybody. But the truth is it doesn't. I mean, there's not going to be any one book that appeals to everybody. I mean, like my first parenting book, it was a mashup of a parenting book and a zombie survival guide. And I thought that was hilarious. And it appealed to a large subset of people. But there were certainly other people who were like, yeah, we love your tweets, but we hate zombies. I'm not touching that book with a 10-foot pole. Or then my next book, Bare Minimum Parenting, it was I guess it was a little bit more serious, but in a weird direction. And there were people who just, they were overachievers and they just couldn't get on board with the whole idea that laziness is good. So you're never going to win everybody over. People who like my tweets sometimes hate the books. Sometimes people who like the books hate the tweets. So I guess the whole goal is to find somebody who really kind of appreciates, what you're going for. And if there isn't anybody, if there isn't an audience, there's times you got to find the audience, and the internet can be a great way to do that, to find the community that would be interested in a book like that. It's certainly a much heavier topic than I've ever dealt with. But then again, I joked about kids getting eaten in the zombie apocalypse, so I don't have a lot of room to talk on that one.
People are also very invested in the author. Like if you go to a bookstore, it's not arranged by book title, it's arranged by author last name. So like a lot of people, they'll really follow authors and everything like that. So that's really what I've been trying to focus on now, as far as, just getting that fan base any way I can. Just kind of get people interested in me, and then hopefully they'll check out the book or the movie that I have on my website as well. So you mentioned earlier that you had a new book coming out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what it's going to be about, or are you at liberty to say?
Yeah, I'm not under any non-disclosure agreements. I dream of the day when I'm important enough to have a non-disclosure agreement about something I'm doing. But no, my third book's coming. I've got a bunch of different contracts for projects coming up. But the book is titled How to Save Your Child from Ostrich Attacks, Accidental Time Travel, and Anything Else That Might Happen on an Average Tuesday. And it's kind of a spiritual successor to my first book, Only Dead on the Inside, A Parent's Guide to Surviving the Zombie Apocalypse. I wanted to go in a silly, quirkier route. So Bare Minimum Parenting, well, it was a comedy book. It kind of made one coherent argument throughout. And this book is just a lot of quick hit scenarios. What do you do if ostriches attack? What do you do if you have to go blow up the Death Star and you're watching your kid at the same time? What do you do if you're on a sinking ship with your kid? What do you do if you get thrown back in time and you have to fight off dinosaurs while you're with a child? It's that kind of thing over and over. Like each scenario is more absurd than the last. And I had so much fun writing this book, and it's got my terrible art in there as always. So hopefully it resonates with people. But it's been a lot of it's been an experience putting it together. I guess I'll say that. I'll leave it to you what kind of experience that was.
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool because like in your context, being CG the more comedy type thing, like the bad art isn't that bad of a thing, and sometimes it can actually make it even funnier. I know in my particular case, I had a tremendous amount of trouble with my book cover because I wanted it to be something that like really popped, and I knew right away I wanted to have that red and black color scheme.
Yeah.
And it was such a pain because I actually have a friend who's a fantastic artist.
Yeah.
And he, ironically enough, he always complained that he's like, it's so hard to get paid as an artist because everyone wants artwork, but no one ever wants to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I offered to pay him for it, and he kept saying he was going to do it, and then he never did it. And then I tried to get a couple other artists to do it. They said they would do it. I said I'd pay them. They never did it. So then I got frustrated and I tried to draw it myself, but I suck at drawing. I couldn't make anything that looked better than ass. And then I got frustrated with that. So then I tried to get an artist again. I was going to school for a while, and I had this thing posted up where I said, anyone who could draw. I had a brief description of my story, kind of a general idea of what I wanted. I said, I'll pay you. One person responded. He had a little bit of a sketch, said, what about this? I said, that looks fantastic. Finish it. I'll pay you. He never finished it. So then I got frustrated and tried to do it myself, but I still sucked at drawing. I mean, who knew that? I mean, 2 months later, without practice, I didn't get any better.
Shocking.
Yes. And then and I know at one point we tried to do a model. That didn't work out. So eventually, I don't know if you've seen my book cover yet, but I'm going to ruin it for you right now. You want to know what it is? It is lint that I have set on fire. I had this idea for a flaming trident, and then I knew I couldn't draw it, so I just got lint, and I put it in a cookie sheet, and I set it on fire, and I took pictures of it in the dark, and then I put it through a filter to make the flames look more red, and then I put the words on it and everything like that, and that's eventually, but it took me over a year to finally get that book cover. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, so I've gone the traditional publishing route. I'm with Bimbella Books, and it's not a huge publisher by any means, but they've been great. And so they hire graphic artists to do it. But one of the interesting things for the first book is they incorporated my bad art onto it. So they have these professional artists there, but then they actually took my stick figure zombies and people and put them right on the cover. And there were some people who, when I shared it online, they're like, well, that looks really unprofessional. Why would you do that? It's like I guess one of the things you want to do is kind of capture the spirit of the book. So they have the presentation and the words at all. It looks very dramatic, but then it shows you very much what's on the inside. And I really love that blending. I would hate to have photorealistic art on the front and then have people open up the book to find stick figures and just be horribly disappointed. So there's no false advertising there. So yeah, but you really hit on something important there. People really do judge books by their cover. So making that first impression is important. So hopefully it sounds like your lint trident is very cool. I never pondered setting lint on fire, but that you get to do all kinds of fun stuff when you're an author, I guess.
Yeah, when you're an author and when you're desperate, that was the main thing. It was mainly just desperation. Because originally I wanted some other stuff on there, but I knew I was just never going to be able to draw it or never be able to get the exact image I wanted. But I figured this was kind of cool, and it would tell people at least a little bit about the story, Trident with the devil, and then the title is My Soul Burns. So you could just look at it and you kind of get, it's about the devil, kind of like what you were saying. You don't want to false advertise. People should be able to look at the cover and at least have a general idea as to what the story's about. Whether it's something really dark or something just really goofy and fun, like the stick figures kind of relays that message that this isn't going to be too serious.
Yeah. One of the downsides of doing the interview circuits, everything, people kind of ask the same stuff over and over, and you kind of get those canned responses. I can't imagine being a real celebrity. I mean, me just in my minor corner of the internet, people kind of hit the same points. Can you imagine being like, Tom Cruise or somebody and get asked the same thing, like literally for 8 hours a day, you go to some junket and people sit down and do that. I think that's a whole nother level. So you and I have it easy here. We just sit here off the cuff, and it's not so bad.
Yeah, the comfort of our own home. Don't got to go to Japan.
I'm not even wearing socks right now. I'm just barefoot here.
I actually want to go.
You want to go to Japan? Yeah.
Yeah, eventually that'd be cool. But yeah, I'm sure there's other places that I wouldn't have any interest in going, especially in a place that's really hot. I like hate it when it's really super hot. It sucks. I've seen you in an interview before, and you said you didn't really like you were hoping that this would take off, but you didn't really think it was going to. You know, like as most people feel, you know, you kind of have that hope and that, you know. But was there a certain moment where you kind of started to change your mind on that?
You know, what I've always had going for me is that I wasn't going to stop no matter what happened. I mean, I blogged for 10 years and it never went anywhere. And at no point did I ever think, well, I'm going to give up writing. I just kind of thought I have an indefinite period of time. It goes back to that day job. I think sometimes people, you know, they quit their day job and they think I have to do this all or I'm going to starve in 2 weeks. Like my deadline is now. Like I never quit my job. I just worked 2 jobs at once and did all this writing on the side. So you couldn't starve me out. I was going to keep going. So I made it through blogging and never went anywhere. Then I got to Twitter, and I actually had a glimmer of hope real early on when I got up to at first I had 0 followers, and I couldn't figure out how to get to even 5 or 10. I thought, wouldn't it be awesome if I get to like 200 followers? Wouldn't that be incredible? And then one afternoon, I kind of figured out how it worked, and I got up to like 25 followers in a day. And believe it or not, that was the moment where I thought, this is it. This is how I'm going to build. And then I had a similar experience recently with email lists. If you don't have an email list yet, as far as building up an audience, that's probably the most powerful way to connect to people and to get them to read longer form stuff. And I started going with that, and that started taking off. And that was kind of my second wind of, okay, now this is really going to take me to the next level. So yeah, joining Twitter and then getting the email list going were kind of the two points where I thought, wow, this could actually be something pretty big.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I read about the email list all the time. I haven't done it yet. Maybe I should look into it more because the main reason why I haven't done it is because I don't really know how. Like I've heard of like lots of things saying, no, you should do an email list, and I'm like, okay, I'll figure that out eventually.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that's sort of the downside with my thing, because since I was originally planning on doing the traditional publishing, I didn't come up with a really solid marketing plan. I've sort of been figuring it out as I go, and I kind of regret that a little bit. I think if I had started off with at least a little bit better of a plan, maybe I could have gained a little bit of momentum, you know, right out of the gate, and then, you know, a little bit of momentum, it's a little bit easier to take the next step, and then you know, keep going. Whereas, now.
One thing, though, you do actually, even if you go with a big publisher, even if you're with Random House or somebody, you still end up doing the marketing yourself. I mean, I've talked to New York Times best-selling authors, and they were shocked. They're like, yeah, I mean, the publisher really didn't do a lot for me at all. Anymore, it really falls down on your own shoulders, unless you're somebody who's so big that they're going to send you on a bus tour across the country and fly you here or there. For the most part, they're going to count on you to do the legwork. It's kind of shocking. You figure some of these big publishers put out hundreds of titles a year, and it's real easy to get lost. So yeah, even it's never a bad time to get started promoting yourself. I mean, you're going to be your own biggest fan. And if you're not your own biggest fan yet, I guess you should probably start with convincing yourself. That's be your biggest fan and worst critic, or however that works out. But yeah, there's never a bad time for shameless self-promotion, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also I had considered at one point like trying to get like a publicist or something like that, someone who actually kind of knew a bit about. But then, you know, they got to take a cut, and you're already kind of cut out from the publishers a little bit. So I was like, gosh, am I going to lose too much money if I do it that way? Did you ever get in kind of like publicists, or like you said you had an agent?
I have a literary agent, and they're the go-between between the author and the publisher. There's a lot of publishers that don't take unsolicited manuscript, and publishers or agents are also good for foreign rights. I would have no idea how to sell my books overseas, but my agent, he's part of a Trident Media Group. His name's Mark Gottlieb, and he goes over. There's a big book fair in Frankfurt. I think there's one in London. He's over there every year selling it. Now my books are available in, I think it's like 6 different languages now, and that's something that just never would have happened without an agent. So yeah, if you can get a literary agent, I definitely recommend it. As for publicists, I think it's a mixed bag. They can open some doors sometimes to maybe getting on some TV shows and radio shows that you might not have had otherwise. But just like anything else in life, nothing's guaranteed. And I think typically you pay them up front to get you where you're going. So that's not a route I've gone. I've kind of basically everything I do is kind of self-promotion. So I stayed away from paying somebody and just kind of relied on my own channels to push myself. Plus, BenBella, they also have a marketing person, and they would set up some interviews I couldn't have gotten otherwise. They got me on some TV shows in Chicago and Indianapolis and around there that I made appearances on. One time they actually they mentioned my book on Ryan and Kelly, that morning show. They mentioned that on there. That was pretty exciting. It was for like 10 seconds. I still bragged about it to my parents. So you never know. Once you get your book out there, things can kind of take off and they can pop up in random spots, and then you just kind of put that on your resume and you move on and pretend it was a bigger deal than it was.
So I know you like tweet about your kids a lot. Are any of them involved in your books, or is that like something kind of completely separate?
Well, I mean, they can, the oldest ones can read, but they certainly can't, write at a professional level. But they're inspiration behind everything. They're kind of they're the starting point for my jokes and my outlook on life. So I start with that bedrock of the strange things kids do and the way they kind of look at the world, and then I incorporate that into what I write. And with all my jokes, some of them are real and some of them are exaggerated and some of them are made up. But they all start with that point of, hey, I'm spending all this time with these weird, quirky kids. Let's look at things from their perspective. And that is a deep and dark rabbit hole. Once you go down that, you're never coming back.
Yeah, like I totally agree with that. Like a lot of like jokes, you want to exaggerate a little bit, or like sometimes like something will happen and then it'll make me think of something like really funny, and then I'll just tell people that what I thought of is what really happened, because it's just funnier when they think it's real,
Well, yeah, and it's sometimes the situation, especially if you have 280 characters, you can't, there's a whole day of context going around whatever happened, and sometimes it's just too oddly specific, and you just kind of make it more general so people get what it is. You kind of broaden the scope of what it was about, and then people can relate to it. So it's the way comedy has always written. If you're looking for an autobiography, you're in the wrong place. But if you want relatable jokes that you say, hey, my kids do things like that, then you're definitely in the right place. As far as book writing is always be working on your next project. When you're shopping one around, looking for an agent, looking for a publisher, don't let that hold everything up. I mean, if you're a writer, keep writing that next book. Because I've had books that didn't sell, but while that book wasn't selling, I was on to my next one, and then that book did sell. So don't let yourself get stopped by one project. Just keep going, and eventually it'll work out.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on Art Array. Hopefully I'll be having some more guests soon. This is James Breakwell, graciously gifting us with his time. Thank you once again. You've been a wonderful guest, and you, your wife, your kids, you're hilarious. Again, thank you for being on the show. Hope your next book works out really well. It sounds hilarious. I'm definitely going to check it out. And hope you all enjoyed the show. I will be back hopefully next week. I will keep you updated though on my Twitter. James, all his links are going to be down below, along with mine for my website, for my book and my movie. And we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.
All right.